traditional medicine. When I talk about traditional medicine, I'm talking about hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, anybody in medicine, anybody who makes their money in medicine, who gets reimbursed from insurance companies. They don't make money off of two types of people, healthy people and dead people. They make money off of chronically sick people. It's like a built-in incentive structure, but it would be nice if you had a healthcare system where doctors were incentivized to keep you healthy. They don't have a platform for telling people about all these health hacks that keep people healthy. And I thought it would be fascinating to tell everybody about that and really spotlight the people that are making this happen, staying vital, staying healthy, staying sexy, staying young is what living life is all about. And if you have doctors that have proven treatments that keep people young and healthy so they don't get sick, you want people to know about these treatments and that they exist.
This show comes out every Tuesday. Always looking for the latest, greatest health hacks. We've already covered an enormous amount of information. This is a really exciting show. And so what we ask you to do, if you're listening to this on just the audio, subscribe to it at iTunes. Just hit that subscribe button.
Hello, this is Mark L. White with Health Hacks, and I'm super excited to have sitting next to me Ben Azadi. Ben Azadi is a personal health transformation coach, an expert on intermittent fasting, an expert on sleep, something we all need, something that I need more of than a lot of people, and I don't do a great job of it. And thanks for joining me, Ben. I'm really happy you're here.
I'm happy to be here in person, in the flesh, and it was a short drive, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love when people actually come in and see us. Tell me, how'd you get into this space?
I got into this space about 11 years ago now, 2007, 2008, when I went through my own health transformation. I was obese for most of my life. And
you don't look obese.
I don't look obese on this day. But for most of my life, I was that fat kid growing up, bullied, picked on. I wore T-shirts inside of swimming pools, low self-confidence, low self-esteem. And I had to hit rock bottom in order for me to wake up, because up until that point, I tell people I was tiptoeing my way through life, hoping to make it safely to death. I was living a very uninspired life, drugs, alcohol, video games, a victim mentality. And I hit rock bottom in my life, and I used rock bottom as a springboard to launch into the zip code of what I call greatness through books. I started reading books, and it woke me up. But up until that point, Mark, I was depressed, dude. I was suicidal. I was actually on Google looking for ways to kill myself because I was afraid to be in a room by myself, because I would think about ways to hurt myself. And I thought about my mother, and I thought about what I would leave for my mother, and it would stop me in my tracks. And then I started reading books like Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor and these legends, these greats. And it really just opened up my eyes. And I took responsibility, and I stopped blaming other people, and I stopped having that victim mentality, and I became a victor of the future. And fast forward 9 months from that decision to take control over my health, I lost 80 pounds. I went from 34% body fat to 6% body fat, size 38 waist to size 30. But more important than all of that, I obtained a mental six-pack, and that's what started me into the health space back in 2008, 2009.
Tell me about when you say rock bottom, was there one defining event, or was it a series of events?
It was a series of events leading to it. What tipped the scale was my ex-girlfriend breaking up with me. We were together for 4 years, and I was working at a packing and shipping store as a manager, a very uninspiring 9-to-5 job. I was more concerned with my video game stats, Call of Duty, Madden, than anything else, even my ex-girlfriend. So she broke up with me, and I was devastated, just devastated, because I didn't have any mental toughness, mental strength. And that's what put me right into that dirt. And when I was in that dirt, I thought I was there to be buried. I thought I was never going to get out of there. I didn't know how I was going to get out of there. And it wasn't until those books that really opened up my eyes, and I realized that I was put in the dirt, not because I was buried, but because I was planted. And now this is my time to bloom. And that's exactly what I did.
What was the biggest book? Was there one book that you read or one mentor that you looked up to kind of change that?
It was Wayne Dyer and Bob Proctor primarily. And the books that I read was Excuses Be Gone by Wayne Dyer.
That's an amazing book.
Amazing book, because it just really opens up your eyes. And then all of Bob Proctor's books. And I still study Bob Proctor to this day, and Wayne Dyer, but Bob Proctor's still around. So it was that. And then also a book, The Slight Edge. The Slight Edge, I remember that book because it taught me the compound effect and how just small decisions you make every day could either lead to great growth or just continuously destructing your life, or deconstructing your life. So those were the books that I started with.
So the first habit you changed was diet. When you looked at yourself, well,
yeah, I didn't know I didn't know anything about nutrition back then. So I started reading Men's Health magazine and going on forums. And I started doing P90X. I was too afraid to go to a gym. So P90X was my jam.
Tony Horton, right?
Tony Horton, yeah. Tony, and it did a great job for me. And I was consistent. I did P90X. I did all these Beachbody programs, Insanity. And I started changing up my diet. I didn't understand what eating healthy was. I was doing it to get six-pack abs. That was my goal. I wanted to show my ex-girlfriend, hey, look what you missed out on.
Did you get her back?
I didn't get her back, and everything worked out for the better. But that was my motivation at the time. I was like, I'm going to show her. But then it evolved to a bigger purpose, and that's kind of where everything started for me.
Well, what is that bigger purpose for you?
Well, the bigger purpose is what happened with my dad, actually, and what's happening to America. And I'll share real quick about my dad. He had type 2 diabetes for most of my life, and he immigrated here from Iran back in the 1970s with my mom and dad. And he followed a standard American diet, which is also what I call the stupid American diet. Cheeseburgers, iced tea. He drank a lot of iced tea.
Sweet iced tea?
Sweet iced tea. Extra sweet iced tea. Not knowing that it was bad for you and it was going to cause havoc in your health because he wasn't taught this. And he developed type 2 diabetes, which is a lifestyle disease that unfortunately is matched with medication. And I took him to his doctor's appointments. It's actually right across the street. The Aventure Hospital is where I used to take him all the time. And he was being treated for his diabetes, and his health just deteriorated over the years to the point where he had diabetic neuropathy. He was having very difficult time walking. And he called me one day saying that he couldn't walk at all. And his nerves were becoming damaged in his feet. So me and my mom took him to the ER here in Miami Beach at Mount Sinai, and we omitted him there. And he was so stressed out about being there because he was scared he was going to lose his feet, because that's the next step. They don't want you to go gangrene, so they chop off your feet. Unfortunately, that's what happens. And he was so scared about that he suffered a massive stroke in the hospital, and he lost the ability to speak, and he lost the complete right side to function of his body. He couldn't even move anymore. And from that point, I watched his health every single week deteriorate, and his body just shrunk before my eyes. And I would visit him for 9 months. I visited my dad in the hospice as his health just got away from him. And I ended up visiting him on a Monday night. It was August 12th, 2014. And he was just throwing up on himself. He was convulsing. He was shaking. He was in the worst shape I had ever seen my father in. And then the nurses ended up cleaning him up, and he looked a lot better that night. And I walked up to him and I looked at him in the eyes. He couldn't even speak a word to me, but I was talking to him, and I told him that I loved him, that I'd always be his son. He'd always be my dad. I kissed him on the forehead, and I told him, "Hasta la vista, baby," which is from the Terminator. He used to always say it to me. And I went home that night, and I prayed the same way I prayed every single night, to please end my father's suffering. He suffered enough. And I said that prayer every night for months, but it was this night that something felt different. And literally 24 hours later, less than 24 hours later, the next Tuesday at noon, I got a phone call from the hospice. And I look at it, and I see that it's from the hospice, and my heart just sunk in my chest because I knew something was up. So I pick up the phone, and it's my father's nurse letting me know that he had passed that morning. And from that, Mark, came a whole bunch of questions. Why did this happen to my father? Why are so many Americans, 60% plus of Americans, are diabetic or pre-diabetic? 1 out of 3 Americans are getting diagnosed with cancer. Autism rates are just outrageous. And there's just an epidemic going on here. So I set out to study health like I've never done before. Before, it was a hobby. I lost weight. I was having a lot of fun. I was a personal trainer. Now I was determined to figure out what happened to my dad, what's happening to America. And I've come to the realization that the same information that I'm about to share on your podcast, that I share in my books, that I share all across the world, it's the same information that would have saved my father's life. And I also know that I was given that mountain so I could show the rest of the world that this mountain can be moved. And that's why you saw on my sheet here that I'm committed to educating 1 billion people, because there's so much confusion out there, and I want to cut through that noise. And that's my story, and that's why I'm here.
So getting back to all that misinformation, and first of all, thank you so much for sharing that story. There's so much misinformation when it comes to diet. Do we do a keto diet? Do we cut meat out of our diet? Do we do intermittent fasting? Is it a combination of all three? Through all your studies, what diet do you recommend?
There's not one diet that works for anybody long-term. I think every single diet works short-term. That includes keto, that includes vegan, that includes paleo. The magic is in the variation. And I'll explain what I mean by that. When you study ancient culture, there's not one ancient culture in the history of this world that stuck with one diet long-term. They always adapted to their environment. So they were paleo, they were keto, they were vegan sometimes, they were vegetarian, but they always adapted to their environment. With that being said, I love the keto diet because it teaches your cells, your body, which is made up of 70 trillion cells, to choose the fuel source that it has been designed to thrive on, which is fat. When you're producing ketones and you're burning fat as your primary fuel source, but not your only fuel source, that's when you're thriving. So I love the keto diet as a great way to reset somebody's metabolism, make their hormones more sensitive, which are all about that. And then you start flexing in out of ketosis and you kind of mimic what your ancestors did, because when you change up your diet and you vary your diet, that's where your hormones become more sensitive and inflammation downregulates.
Now, when you say the keto diet, that means no carbs whatsoever. I think it's like 20 grams a day of carbs. But didn't our forefathers used to eat a lot of fruit, coconut? Well, I guess coconut's not carbs, is it?
Coconut could be considered a carb, but it's a fat. And they did. But here's the deal. There was not fruit available all the time, so they were forced to fast, right? And when you're fasting, what happens? You're producing ketones. So keto is not a diet. It's a metabolic state. And that's where the confusion lies. Just because it's the number one search term on Dr. Google does not make it new, does not make it a fad. It's a fact. It's a metabolic state. So when they were forced to fast, they produced ketones.
Now, let's talk a little bit about intermittent fasting too. Do you do keto diet with intermittent fasting?
Yeah, that's the way I teach it. I teach somebody to stop burning sugar and let's start burning fat, number one. And once they become metabolically flexible, then we start pairing intermittent fasting, which I love intermittent fasting. It's my favorite tool in the health toolbox, and there's different variations and we can get into that. But yeah, that's the way I construct it.
So I met somebody earlier today who says he's doing intermittent fasting and eats one meal a day.
Yeah.
He just eats dinner time. Is that the way to do it? Is it 8 hours of eating, 16 hours off? Like, what do you recommend?
So what this individual is doing is something called the OMAD diet, so 1 meal a day diet. And that's okay. That's great for some people, especially if you have a lot of weight to lose. If you are obese, then I like the OMAD once you are keto adapted. There's no rules for your schedule. It's kind of based off of your lifestyle and your goals. With that being said, though, just to give you a general answer, I like a 16-8 or even better, an 18-6 format for most people, meaning 18 hours out of the day, you're fasted. You're just having some water, some sea salt. 6 hours out of the day, you're having your meals. A lot of people confuse, though, intermittent fasting with calorie restriction and counting calories. And I'm way removed from that world. I think calories matter, but they're not important. I think they're a distraction to what really matters. So intermittent fasting is not about eating less. It's about eating less often.
Now, if you're doing intermittent fasting, it doesn't mean that when you're actually eating, you can eat cake or whatever you want. You still have to stay on a diet that stays away from a lot of carbs, correct?
Yeah, that's the goal. You want to make sure when you are eating, you're eating healthier, for sure.
So going back to that time, almost a decade ago, and you said that you're going to change your life and get this diet. Was that the first thing you did? Was keto diet, or did you make gradual steps?
I made gradual steps. It wasn't keto diet. I didn't start the keto diet or this keto lifestyle until about 6 years ago. I did the calorie counting thing, and I ate every 2 to 3 hours. But any change I would have made at that point in my life would have given me results because I was just eating pizza and drinking soda all day and playing video games.
So there you go. Cut out the pizza and the soda, and that's the best first step.
Yeah, it's exactly small steps, small tweaks.
So, okay, so when you started to change your diet, you started exercise. You're in amazing shape now, but what exercising were you doing back then?
I was doing the P90X. I was doing everything in home. I was doing Beachbody Insanity workouts. And then I became a personal trainer, and then I opened up my own CrossFit gym. So it expanded, but I was doing these 30 to 60-minute HIIT workouts. And I was doing it excessively, maybe too much back then, but I was young and I was really determined.
No, I did the keto diet once. I noticed that with the keto diet, you don't have a lot of energy when you first start. I guess they call that the keto flu. How does one get over that?
Yeah. And the way I teach it is so you don't really experience that. The keto flu, it's kind of a negative term. And the reality of it is that it's really carbohydrate with withdrawal symptoms. That's what it really is. It's not really a keto flu. So I teach a gradual approach to keto. I don't teach somebody to go all in. Some other influencers do that and they just say, embrace the suck, get through it. And on the opposite side, you're going to be good. I teach a gradual approach of somebody who's a pure sugar burner. If you're a pure sugar burner, eating every 2 to 3 hours, eating a whole bunch of carbohydrates, and I tell you tomorrow we're going keto, it's going to look ugly. Like it's going to look really bad. So I teach people to start gradually decreasing their carbohydrates while they increase their protein and fat, and no snacking in between meals. And then we go from there.
Are there cheat days allowed?
I call them feast days. And yeah, absolutely. Those are my keto flex days, where if you have earned the badge to earn this day, then go for it. And I do incorporate that in my protocols.
So there's no tracking whatsoever. You don't have to track calories. You don't have to. Do you keep a food journal?
No food journal. The only thing I have my clients keep track of in the beginning is their total carbohydrates, actually their net carbohydrates. So I make sure they're under 50 net carbs per day, and that's their total carbs minus their fiber, just to make sure that they're getting into a state of ketosis, which is what you want to hit that number.
If all I did was just the keto diet, is working out. I know everybody says working out's important, but isn't losing weight all about your diet?
Most of it is diet. I would say exercise is important for other benefits like brain function and building muscle, which is great for longevity. But when it comes to just, if your goal is to get healthy and lose weight, then exercise should not be the main focus. Because if you're lucky, maybe 10 to 15% maximum of your results will come from exercise. It's going to be your diet. It's going to be your stress. It's going to be your sleep.
So how'd you get across the mindset? Because you went through this depression, or you went through this rock bottom point, and then you built that 6-pack mindset. I love that term, 6-pack mindset. But was it just through reading? Was it meditation? Was it like, how do you stay in the moment?
It was through books. Books saved my life. Taking courses, surrounding myself with mentors, and also cutting a lot of people out of my life that were not contributing to where I wanted to be. But books, and I became a very obsessive with learning. And what I did actually is I transferred my obsession and all this energy, because people might say that I have an addictive personality. I might be labeled with that, but I had that addiction in video games and bad food, and I had all that energy. And what I just did was I transferred it to learning about health and studying books. So books is what really carved that mental 6-pack.
So how long did it take before you said, you know what, I'm into this lifestyle? Like, how do you, because that's you got to admire making all those changes, but that's got to be hard for most people.
Yeah, it was hard. And I tell people, you got to sometimes embrace the suck. And when I mean by that was, when I first started out, nobody knew I had these goals to get healthy. They just knew me as the fat guy, the obese guy. And I went to parties and barbecues, and everybody was having pizza and beer. And I would say, no, I wouldn't have that. I would have just like some chicken breast and some veggies. And they would make fun of me, and it would suck, right? It would suck having my friends make fun of me. And then I would work out and I would be sore, and it would suck. All these changes, it sucked. And here's the formula that I tell people. Suck, 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 cess.
Suck, 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 sex?
Cess.
Cess.
Suck, cess.
Suck, 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 cess. Okay, got it. Success.
Embrace the suck and just keep pushing forward. Beat yesterday, and you're going to get the results you want.
Have you ever had a setback after that time?
A setback?
Like, have you ever fallen off the diet? Have you ever gotten
totally.
back?
Yeah.
So what do you do when that happens? Like, how do you get back into that mindset?
I forget about it and I move on. And I tell people it's never about the setback. It's always about the get back. It's not really about that. And if you just dwell on, oh, why did I do that? You make matters worse. So I forget about it and I just push forward and I just try to beat yesterday. That's my goal.
Okay. Some of the stuff that you've published about intermittent fasting, you've also published the Perfect Health Booklet that has like your steps to proven transformation. What are those steps? Like, what does that look like?
We were just talking about one of those steps before the podcast. Sleep is one of the chapters on there, and sleep is so important. We both have our Oura rings. We could show the live streamers that we have our Oura ring here. Sleep is one of the steps because I think sleep is more important than diet and nutrition combined, diet and exercise combined. Because the reason is this: you could be eating the perfect keto diet or whatever diet you're following. You could be exercising perfectly, but if your sleep is crap, it's going to be hard to get the results you want. So you could go days without food. You could go days without exercise. You cannot go days without sleep. Sleep is one of the pillars that if you don't have that in order, it's going to be hard to accomplish the other things. So sleep is one of the keys in that book.
But what if we know that sleep is important, but like, for example, I know sleep's important, but I'm lucky sometimes to get a good 5 hours of sleep. And I wake up, I feel wide awake. Is it that I'm just wired to do that? Like, what are secrets to sleep more?
Secrets to sleep more is having a very powerful nighttime routine that you stick to, and you go to bed at the same time and you wake up at the same time. You kind of set your circadian rhythm. So having a wind down routine would be key, and that's different for every person. For me, it's a little bit of some reading. It's turning off my phone, staying away from stimulation, but having a routine is key.
I'll tell you, when my sleep stopped was the day I got my iPhone.
I believe it. It's very easy to get stimulated by the iPhone.
Yeah, but it's the hardest part is also you wake up in the middle of the night and you just can't fall back asleep.
Yeah, and there's some things you can do to kind of combat that. There's a supplement called Cerephos. I have a lot of clients who do that. If you're waking up between around 2 and 3 in the morning consistently, it's usually a liver thing. That's when the liver is doing a lot of work. It's dumping a lot of bile. So doing some liver support could help. And then Cerephos, which is a supplement you take, it calms the adrenals, could help as well.
How about melatonin? Do you recommend that for your listeners?
I recommend low dose melatonin from a quality source. Absolutely. Not every day, long term, but I do it myself once in a while. Yeah.
And so your wind down, your intermittent fasting, when's the last time somebody should be eating before bed?
That's a great question. I'm glad that you asked that. 3 hours before bed should be the bare minimum, because I tell people, if you want to age faster, if you want to have brain fog, then eat right before bed. That'll do it. What happens is you don't want to give yourself food energy right before you go to sleep and not use that energy, because number one, you're going to store that fat, and then you're going to create a lot of something called reactive oxygen species in the body, which is just free radicals going on. So it's going to age your cells faster. And the next morning, you're not going to be fully recovered because your body was busy digesting the food instead of getting into stage 3, stage 4 sleep. So at least 3 hours before bed should be the minimum.
And I assume you don't drink anymore. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, I don't personally drink anymore, but I do have clients who ask me, "Hey, if you were going to drink, what would you drink?"
And what would you recommend to your clients who drink?
I recommend staying away from beer and wine. Those are the worst, with the exception of dry farm wines. Mm-hmm. And dry farm wines are great. So if I were going to drink, I would drink dry farm wines. They do it right. It's kind of a keto-friendly wine. And if I was going to have alcohol, like a hard liquor, it would be some whiskey or some vodka.
Just solo, no mixers.
Yeah, correct. That's where people get into trouble. It's the mixers.
It's not the vodka. It's the orange juice you mix with the vodka.
Totally. The cranberry, the pineapple, all that juice. Yeah.
Now, the other thing that we really haven't talked about, but it's the latest buzzword now, is mindfulness.
Yeah.
What do you do to stay mindful?
Yeah, mindful. It's important because if I don't have something in place, I find my brain just fried at the end of the day. So what I do, the first 60 minutes of waking up, I protect that time. So I have a morning routine where I write down my gratitude. I write down 10 things I'm grateful for. I write down all my goals in present tense as if they are already accomplished. And then I go for a walk with my dog. I don't check my phone at least 60 minutes until I wake up. And I walk by the water in Bay Harbor Islands and I do some Tony Robbins priming, some breathing. And then I go back home, still haven't checked my phone. And I listen to some Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation, which is a 25-minute guided meditation. Yeah, he's amazing. You got to get him on your podcast. And then I'm ready to start my day. So I do that. And then throughout the day, I take walking breaks. I'll walk my dog later on in the afternoon. I'll take moments to kind of reset myself. And exercise is another way to do it too. So
you have your morning routine. Do you also have an evening routine?
Yeah, it's very similar with the exception I haven't been doing the meditation, but I write down my gratitude. I write down, this time I write down what I was grateful for during that day. Like today, I'm going to write down, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be at Health Gains, to be sharing on your Health Hacks podcast. I'll write down my goals and then I'll do some reading. That's usually my nighttime routine.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading The Magic of Thinking Big. And what's the other name? It's the law of receiving, something like that. The law of receiving, and the magic of thinking big.
Wow, that's who Law of Thinking Big. I haven't heard that.
It's the magic of thinking big is from Dr. David Schwartz, and it's a classic. This is like my 5th time reading it. It's a great book. It's right there by my nightstand.
So let's say you're going away to an island and you could only take 3 books with you. What 3 books would you take?
Yeah, great question. What 3 books would I take if I could only take 3? It would be a Wayne Dyer book. Maybe I Could See Clearly Now is one of his, I think it was his last book before he passed, and it was kind of all of his thoughts in one sitting. So I would do that, Wayne Dyer. I would get Bob Proctor, You Were Born Rich. And then the third one would be probably Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, I recently read The 4 Agreements.
Yeah.
It was an excellent, life-changing book for me.
Yeah, that's a great book.
You're not making assumptions. And really, I commend you for reading, but then taking that distilled knowledge and then sharing that with the public. I think it's amazing.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Let me ask you, like, supplements. Do you take a lot of supplements now?
I do. I take a lot of supplements. I make sure they're high quality and I rotate them. I don't take the same one long term. So I'm a big fan of the right supplements.
What are the right supplements right now?
It depends on the person and their goals. For sure, I'll tell you the ones that might surprise most people. The ones that I don't recommend, right, are fish oil.
Really?
Yeah, fish oil. I used to recommend it for many years, and I came across the research showing it does more harm than good. So I stopped recommending fish oil and probiotics as well, and just a standard multivitamin that has synthetic ingredients. So those are the ones I would recommend we stop taking. And I could go a little bit deeper into the fish oil if you want. Or
I'm curious. I suck down fish oils. I love fish oil. So I'm curious to know what the research is saying.
I did too. Most fish oil is rancid. About 83% of them that are on the shelf are rancid. But let's say it's the most pristine fish oil in the world. It's high quality. It's protected. Your body is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And fish oil needs to be in a cool temperature. So once it enters your body and enters your stomach acid, it turns rancid right away. And what happens is it ends up in your skin. And it creates a lot of problems, especially if the sun hits your skin a lot. So if you look at the countries that have the highest amount of fish oil consumption, it correlates. It doesn't cause it, but it correlates to the highest amount of skin cancer. So you look at that data, there's about 15,000 studies on fish oil. Mm-hmm. Half of them show that there's some sort of a short-term benefit. The other half show that they don't work or they could be really bad for you. So just looking at that would be like going to downtown Miami and you're a construction company, and you said, I'm going to build 1,000 buildings in downtown Miami. And after 10 years, 500 of them have collapsed, 500 of them are still up, and you're like, that was a success. Same thing with fish oil. It's not a success.
So more is not better.
No, more is not better. I would recommend switching over to a plant-based omega supplement that has a better ratio of omega-6 to omega-3.
How about vitamin D supplements?
I like vitamin D supplements as long as it has the other fat-soluble vitamins with it, vitamin A, K, and E. Because if you just take a vitamin D alone, it creates a functional deficiency because they all create for the same receptor site on your cells. So I like it as long as it has all the other vitamins with it.
So if somebody wants to stay healthy over the next 10 years, what things, okay, we talked about sleep, we talked about obviously diet, exercise. What else does somebody need to do to stay healthy?
Yeah, it's going to surprise you, my answer probably. It's love and gratitude. Honestly, because I could tell you all these tips here on fasting and keto and what to eat, dirty keto versus clean keto. This is your fasting schedule. But if you have resentfulness inside of you, if you have hate inside of you, you cannot heal a body that you hate. So it starts with self-love. And some people might get turned off by that and say, oh, this guy's woo-woo. It's changed my life. Love and gratitude for yourself. Love and gratitude for other people, especially people who have bothered you in your life or are currently bothering you. Makes the biggest difference. Because I've seen people, Mark, they're doing keto perfectly, but they're stressed out all the time because they have all these negative thoughts. They're watching mainstream media and they're living in fear, and they're not getting into ketosis because they're raising cortisol all the time. And if you raise cortisol, insulin follows, which makes you store fat, and ketones go away. So I'm telling you, love and gratitude, people sleep on that, but love and gratitude are healers.
How does somebody change that whole resentful mindset? Like if you're talking to somebody who's used to hating everybody and he's got to change or she's got to change, what do they do?
I was that person, and I had to hit rock bottom to wake up. How do you deal with somebody who's not hitting rock bottom, or they don't want to have to hit rock bottom? I would share a book with them. I would share maybe my story with them. They have to want it. They have to actually want to change. They have to have a bigger reason. Their why needs to be bigger than their excuses. And first thing I would tell them to stop watching the mainstream news so much, because that's just going to fill your mind with a lot of negativity. And then
a lot of poison in the mainstream.
A lot of poison. And then I would also here's what I would do. I learned this from Grant Cardone, actually, who's right down the street. Yeah. Take a piece of paper and down the middle, draw a line. On the right side, I want you to write everybody in your life who is supporting you right now, who's giving you positive affirmations. After you have a conversation with them, you feel charged up. So write that. I don't know if it's going to be a long list, but write that on the right side. On the left side of this paper, do the opposite. Anybody who's not supporting you, family, friends, business partners, people who you feel drained after you have a conversation with. And spend most of your time on the right side of that piece of paper and less on the left side. And you're gonna notice, because your environment changes you. Proximity is power, or proximity could destroy you. So you got to change your environment first.
So you really, like in your transformation, you had to cut out like key people in your life that weren't making a good influence. That must have been difficult.
Yeah, it was really difficult. And it still happens to this day, where I just spend less time with people who are just on a different frequency. I'm not better than them. They're not better than me. It's just different frequency, different goals. And it was really difficult when I first started doing it.
Now, in your studies, you talk about like how to live healthy to be 100 years old or more. How do we do that?
Mark, I believe we were designed, we were created, whether you believe in God, Mother Nature, love, the universe, your creator designed you to live 120 years old, disease-free. That's what I call perfect health, just living normal, the way you were designed to be. So we need to follow the rules. And the rules are just going back to our ancient principles, ancient healing strategies, like my coach, Dr. Pompa, always teaches me about. Dan Pompa. Yeah. Are you familiar with Dr. Pompa?
Yeah, I met him a few weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. He's my coach and mentor. You got to have him on your podcast, by the way. Brilliant. He is the most brilliant person in the health space, in my opinion. So going back to our ancient roots, and here's a simple thing that I've been doing a lot of studying on, and I'm going to get somebody on my podcast to talk about this. Grounding. Honestly, grounding. There's a lot of research coming out. What does that mean? Putting your bare feet on Mother Earth every single day. It's like taking a handful of antioxidants. And it's free. It's really interesting because a lot of the things that I speak about, they're free. Fasting, sleep, grounding, love and gratitude. You don't have to pay for that. It's completely free, and they yield you more than the most expensive supplement in the world.
It's just basic knowledge. I mean, have you ever heard of that concept, blue zones?
Yes.
And they study blue zones. And I think a lot of what you're talking about is that type of lifestyle. Blue zones for our listeners out there are areas, I think there's like 8 of them in the world, where people live to be 90 and even 100 years old, and they live very healthy. And they studied these to see what these zones have in common. And they all eat healthy. They all live in gratitude, live in peace. But the other thing is that they have that sense of community and that sense of belonging.
That's the thing. They have community and they have that sense of belonging, like you just said, that it doesn't transfer here. And people are we want that. We are it's in us to want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And they have that along with the gratitude, along with the healthy eating, and they have the highest population of centenarians. So absolutely, it goes hand in hand with that.
How can we create, like if somebody feels alone out there and they are depressed, how do they get that sense of community and they're not living in a blue zone? They're living in this overly technical world. Yeah,
it's easy for me to say, being in gratitude. I live in a beautiful city, Miami. I'm doing what I love to do. I'm living on purpose with my purpose. But it hasn't always been this way for me. I was the exact opposite. So where do you start? Books. I'm going back to books. Books changed my life. Whether you like to read books or like to listen to them, or even podcasts, a podcast like this could change somebody's life. It could wake them up, gain some momentum, and just take it day by day. Start surrounding yourself with people who see greatness in you when you don't see it in yourself. And if you could just do that every single day, just a little bit, just chip away every single day, just know that you have greatness inside of you. You just don't see it yet. Every single person has greatness inside of them. It's just a matter of it being revealed to you.
No, that's very inspirational. Now, you're currently not doing CrossFit anymore, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let me ask you, like, what are you doing these days? You're coaching people? Are you like, how are you helping people achieve their maximum potential?
I do one-on-one coaching with a select handful of people, some entrepreneurs who just want to take their health to a next level, some who are just really challenged with their health. So I take a select few and I do one-on-one health coaching. I do group health coaching in my program, Keto Kamp Inner Circle. So I have that. And I have my podcast, which is the Keto Kamp podcast. The main source of where a lot of people are discovering me and I'm able to get my work out there into the world is my YouTube channel, which is growing rapidly. So Keto Kamp, Kamp with the K, on YouTube is a great resource to check me out. And the next thing I'm about to launch, and I don't know when this episode comes out, it might be out when I launch it, is the Keto Kamp Academy, which is just going to be all videos, a low monthly fee to get into that. And you're going to learn a lot of the stuff that I learned. I just curate it for you in a video. Awesome.
So if you're listening out there and you want to get in touch with Ben, you can go to Keto Kamp, KETO KAMP. Search Keto Kamp. You'll find Ben. You can join his Keto Kamp. You can go to his YouTube videos. Very inspirational guy. I'm so happy you joined us today. I really appreciate you coming out.
Mark, I appreciate you. I love what you guys are doing here. Your new building's fantastic. I love the idea of a health hacks podcast, and I'm glad that we're able to do this today. So thank you for what you're doing of getting this information out there into the world. And I'm just so grateful to be here with you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother.
Take care, my friend.
Thank you, guys.